I'd just like to introduce you all to Nick Hodgson, who's kindly agreed to come and just talk to us about this pandemic. I thank you all for your attendance. It's a hell of a difficult as the leadership of this organization where we've got 5,500 people to know what to do in a situation like this, where we've not only got, they're all spread all over the country and in different areas with different risks. And it's not only consideration for our own internal people, it's consideration for all our stakeholders. And what are the impact on our customers? What are our customers' expectations of us? What is the impact on our suppliers, Andries? At the moment, we haven't sort of contemplated that there could be certain parts we can't get. Could be filters that are manufactured in China or something like that, where suddenly we are running out of suppliers, and we haven't experienced that yet. And obviously all other stakeholders, our shareholders, impact on them. I mean, my mind was just ticking over to the banks. So if you take the banks and you say, well, the banks should be all right, we've got strong lending lines and we've got a good business, but if things change and you start losing money, the banks won't lend you a cent. They'll just, they'll say, well, your capex for this year is frozen because you can't borrow any more money. And these are the sort of things can happen in the world. So, I mean, I obviously don't have an ounce of the answers. And Nick, I invited Nick over, who's a friend, and he's a very, very astute, successful businessman who runs a fine business himself, just to share his experience, because for several weeks now, he's been dedicating his life to understanding this topic and the risks around it. Your views, your personal views, may differ from his. You may be more radical, you may see him as middle of the road, or you may be thinking the other way, hey, this thing's going to go away, there's no problem. And I've heard diverse views from people that I engage with all the time. One way or another, we've got to absorb what Nick says, take it very, very seriously, and respect what he's doing in his organization and in his personal capacity. And we've got to evaluate that and make individual decisions with regard to us and our families. And then we've got a responsibility to our stakeholders and to the company to formulate a strategy. I feel a little bit embarrassed that I haven't got a strategy out yet, I must be honest, because it's my responsibility ultimately, and I take absolute ownership for that. And but at the same time, it's certainly not too late. There's been a lot of information flowing. We've been getting information from people, we've been getting advice, and sometimes when you get your final document out, albeit a little bit later, it could be very impactful. It's never going to be too late. I also just want to invite you to welcome Yossi from the CUP point of view. I contacted Gary on Friday just to tell him we were having this, and I told him we had invited you because, I mean, obviously you're doing your own work on this topic, Yossi, from a holding company point of view. And I just thought with collaboration, you could add to our conversation, and likewise, hearing Nick talk and getting the views from the business and seeing our unique individual requirements, it may help you in formulating your group strategy. So we're going to start with Nick talking. Thanks, Nick. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Terry. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for wanting to hear my story. So, who am I? I am you. I am everybody and I'm nobody. This is going to affect all of us. I'm husband to a wife of 29 years. I'm father to 2 children at university, one at Stellenbosch and one at UCT. I'm father to 2 parents of 90 years old. And I'm a businessman with 23 staff in our head office in Newlands, with 15 staff who run our warehouse in Epping, and with 9 staff who are in an office in Hong Kong. We are importers and suppliers to one of South Africa's major retailers, We operate in the homeware field, and we operate across multiple divisions. How did I get here to be able to stand and talk to you today? In 2009, we were affected business-wise by the swine flu. And prior to that, we had had ripples through our supply chain with H5N1 and H1N1 bird flu and SARS out of Hong Kong. And in 2009, I developed for the school that both of my daughters were at a pandemic plan, because I was very concerned with what I was reading and hearing and seeing coming from overseas. And I printed that out today. And I'm quite amazed that this is from August of 2009, and here was a coronavirus that I actually used on that. And this was for the school, and I'm going to leave it with Terry, because even though it applies to a school, I believe that there are many lessons that you can just say school and apply it to corporation. So that if nothing else, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm hopefully going to get you to think about the matters that are at hand, so that collectively you can come up with a strategy for Unitrans. The last 7 weeks have been remarkable in what we've seen happen in the world. And 7 weeks ago, there were about 1,000 cases coming out of China. And I don't know why, but my hair on my back of my neck stood up, and I began to research this. So I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but I am an informed citizen. For the last 7 weeks, I have done almost nothing other than research and prepare. Prepare from a personal basis and prepare our company for what we believe is coming. The last 7 weeks have been very lonely, and I have endured a huge amount of ridicule. I've been accused of being manic. I have been accused of being obsessive compulsive. And I've been accused of having either a Jesus or a Messiah complex. And many of those accusations have actually come from family members. There is nothing that I have seen in the last 7 weeks that has made me think that I need to go to anybody and say, hey, I'm sorry for alarming you. If anything, as we stand here today with 3 confirmed cases in South Africa, but I was made aware while driving here that there are other cases about to be announced. There is nothing that makes me feel that I should be saying, hey, hang back on this. If anything, I feel like I have not done enough. So this is about a few things, and I'm going to put them up. I've printed out a few things that I'd like to really hammer home to everybody today. The first thing that you need to understand is speed is everything.
Can you
see that? Maybe I'll pull it in here.
That's good.
Okay. Speed is everything. If you haven't developed a plan of action for your company already, you're behind the curve on this. While driving here, I received photographs from Pick n Pay from one of their stores. Their shelves are stripped bare. Absolutely stripped bare. The same as you're seeing in Australia, the same as you've seen in Italy, the same as you've seen in Singapore, in Hong Kong, and in South Korea. And here we have only 3 cases in South Africa. 2 weeks ago, there were 7 confirmed cases in Italy. Today, there are over 8,000 confirmed cases in Italy and hundreds of deaths. They had 100 deaths in Italy yesterday alone. So this is going to develop not on a linear scale. This develops exponentially. And I'll talk about that shortly. The other thing that I want to really hammer home to you today and this I believe to be absolutely, I am passionate about this. Now is the time to be proactive and not reactive. If you're reacting, you're behind the curve, and this is going to catch you short. You need to develop a strategy for your company. You need to develop a strategy for the head office. You're going to need to develop a strategy for your staff at the different layers and the different levels who have different needs. And you're going to need to develop a strategy for yourselves personally and for your families. The third thing I'm going to leave you with today, which is not hammering to you, but this was a quote that was written by a man called Arthur Schopenhauer, a German philosopher who lived between 1788 and 1860. And the quote is that all truth passes through three stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. And third, it is accepted as being self-evident. And from everything that I have seen on the media and that I've personally experienced, we have been in the ridicule stage. You'll have friends saying to you, hey, this is nothing more than the flu, come on. I'll just get it and get on with my life. There are people who are violently opposing it. If you look to what's happening in America, where I believe there is going to be an absolute catastrophe based on the politicization of Trump, that this is going to overwhelm the United States in a very, very short time, because they are violently opposed to what's going on, and we're not going to see a very happy outcome there, I fear. And then we will get to a stage where it is self-evident, like, man, why didn't we see that before? But you have, by Terry saying, hey, hang on a second, now it's time for us to develop a strategy. And maybe in a small way that you've called me in, have a chance to sit down collectively and make the right choices, or the best choices that you can make. So I began researching it 7 weeks ago, and at the time there wasn't as much information out there. So for me it was actually relatively easy to sift through the information and kind of work out what was the truth. And so that's the next thing that I would recommend to you as a company and as the collective executive team for this organization, is deal only with fact-based evidence. In the early days, I had to troll through things, but it wasn't too difficult. Now, there is just an absolute deluge of information out there. There are people saying that this was concocted in a Canadian laboratory, which then went to Wuhan, to another laboratory, and it's germ warfare. There are all sorts of nut jobs out there. You have to ignore all of that. You've got to get to sites that you trust, that you believe, and that are going to give you verifiable scientific evidence. Because otherwise you just basically, as I've seen from other people, will take in so much information that you will be scared into doing nothing. So after I had researched and said, hang on a second, here is a problem, it came at exactly the same time, because about 95% of the products that we import into South Africa come out of China. We have some production in Eastern Europe, in Slovakia, some in Slovenia, and some in Poland, and also in Portugal. But other than that, it is all out of China. We have a warehouse in Epping, and we had geared up our stock in time for Chinese New Year, which happens always around January and February, so we are well stocked. From the 1st of February until the moment that I left the office in Newlands 25 minutes ago, we have not had one factory, not one of hundreds of factories, come back and back into production. Not one. We have got communication with staff who are remaining at home and who are talking up a good talk, that yes, we're going to come back, and they're waiting for the Chinese government to release quarantining to allow factory workers to go back. But I believe that that is going to be a grand experiment once China opens that up. And the quarantining has worked. They were slow to come out the starting gate on this, but subsequently they made a decision that the herd was more important than the individual, and they took draconian measures that I have seen and that I believe are correct in order to force quarantine people into their homes. In order to get their economy kick-started, they're going to have to release that, and people are going to go back into factories and start to work. Fortunately, many of the Chinese factories, once the workers come from the western provinces into the east, they often live in a compound within the factory. And so I would imagine, thinking about China, that if a factory has a worker who is infected, they will quarantine just that factory, but maybe the factory next door may still be able to work. To date, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen any evidence of that. And of course, we need China, because China is producing way more for the world than they did in 2009 and prior to that, when we had the bird flu scare. So once I had brought this information onto my desk, I felt that we needed to be completely transparent with our staff. I felt that that was really, really important, that we formulated a plan early on and that we communicated it openly and completely with all of our staff. And so it wasn't done as you're getting it today. This developed over a couple of weeks. And the first presentation which I made to our head office staff was called "Prevention is Better than Cure." And that is as valid today as it was when I gave it about 4.5 weeks ago. Let's just have a quick overview. Some of you or all of you may know this, and I apologize if you already know this. Bear with me for a few moments while we just kind of step back and look at what we do know right now. Okay, COVID-19 was called coronavirus. They then said, hey, let's call it something. So now it is officially named COVID-19. It's a virus, it's not a bacteria. It presents mostly with a sore throat, fever, and a sense, when you're getting a cold, you feel unwell. It's a lower respiratory infection. So a lower respiratory isn't only here, it's anything from here downwards into the lungs. It very seldom presents with normal cold-like symptoms of, getting a runny nose, or just a normal cold. What we do know is that around 82% of all of the people who catch it have mild symptoms. So mild symptoms is basically going to be a really bad flu. You're going to feel pretty bad, but you will get through it. And the consideration for your company and the continuity of your company and the continuation of our company, and why I called it "Prevention is Better than Cure," is that what we have seen around the world so far is the health system very, very quickly becoming overwhelmed. Of the 17 or 18 to 20% of those people who do not get it mildly and who require hospitalization, the outcomes are far less certain. So the other thing you may hear out from your friends of "this is just the flu," like, it's only the old people that get it. Be very, very careful. Yes, there is a current trajectory where infants, younger children, and young adults have got a much lower mortality rate. When you get up to my parents' age at 90, at 80 and above, no matter whether you catch it and have a mild or severe symptoms, about 16% of people over 80 will die. So if you have parents, take that into consideration from a personal point of view, that it is a very, very high risk. That then comes down into the 60s and the 50s. I'm 58. I have asthma, that's an unknown. People with pre-existing conditions, diabetes, pulmonary issues, tuberculosis, something that really affects us in South Africa, big consideration. HIV, big consideration. Anything where your immune system is compromised is going to lead to a less favorable outcome. As it stands right now, the approximate case fatality rate that we know is around 2.3%. But there are some figures coming out of Italy right now which are quite alarming. One would have thought Italy, good health system, going to have a handle on it. They really don't. It's well over 5% right now. And that is extremely concerning. So from our side, that's key. That is absolutely key. We believe that China has, or I believe anyway, and from what I've seen, that China has grossly underreported the severity of this outbreak. And I think if there's anything that you do right now, taking away and going forward and look to Italy, look to South Korea. South Korea has been absolutely incredible with their testing. And what we may see, that what we hope to see, is that case fatality rate start going back down once more people are tested, once more people they see have got mild symptoms, because certainly if it was anywhere like what it is right now, it will be absolutely devastating to the world. The British health authorities believe that between 60 and 70% of the entire population of Great Britain will catch it. And if 2.3% of those die, those numbers are absolutely staggering. So prevention is better than cure. And the reason why prevention is better than cure are a couple of things. This is a novel coronavirus, novel meaning new. The human immune system has no protection against that. We haven't seen it before. And one of the reasons why people are dying is that once you develop complications, the major complication that you get is pneumonia. And the major complication from having the pneumonia is that because the body does not know how to handle this new virus and what white blood cells or what anti-infectious agents to put out to try to fight it, it just says, hey, I'm going to declare nuclear war and throw everything at it, and you have what's called a cytokine storm, which is where your body just basically kills itself. So you want to prevent this from happening for a couple of reasons. You're going to have a better staff turnout at work, so you're going to be able to remain operational for as long as possible. It's my belief that the very, very best minds in the world are working on this right now, and will apply the power of computers and collaboration to find a solution to how we deal with it, either to lower the death rate, to find a way to mitigate against it, or to develop a vaccine. But you have to consider, even if they developed a vaccine tomorrow and they got it through human testing and they collaborated and said, you know what, this is for humanity, we're putting it out there so that everybody is going to get a vaccine. How long it might take to develop 7 billion vials, and where in South Africa, sitting at the southern tip, are we going to be in the list of those that get some of that vaccine? So those are things to think about. We want to try to slow this down. We want to slow it down so that in the event of any of your family members or your staff members becoming infected, they are not needing to go to the hospital, because from what I've seen in China and what I've seen in Italy last week, I saw in China a few weeks ago, people sitting in the car park of hospitals, just like your car park outside your head office, sitting connected up to an oxygen bottle with their arm connected to a drip, just trying to get some form of treatment. I've seen videos which I do believe to be true of people dead in the passageways in hospitals. There was an interview that I saw last week on Friday of an Italian doctor in one of the northern Italian regions who said in the history of their entire hospital, they have never had 100 pneumonia patients in the hospital at one time. He said, this is just completely unbelievable. We just never seen anything like this. And I think that it would be unrealistic for us to expect that we are not going to be affected. But what we have been given is an amazingly powerful pair of great binoculars to look over the horizon, to see what other countries are doing, to inform us what we should do going forward. So let's just have a look very, very quickly over here. Let me just explain to you a little bit.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So that's time, and that is severity. Okay, so severity of the infection and the time that it takes. On average, it's about 0 to 7 days from infection that most people will be asymptomatic. So it's not like the flu. When you have the flu, you're like, oh man, I don't feel so good, something's coming on, you're infectious then. You weren't infectious before you got sick. The thing that is concerning the World Health Organization and everybody around the world, and why we're seeing such a massive spread, I believe, is that you have got this window when you've touched a surface, you've shaken a hand, you've opened a doorknob, you've become infected by rubbing your hands or your eyes or your nose, and you're going around feeling fantastic, and you now go and shake somebody else's hand. But your viral load from that day one is already starting to climb. The green is the viral load in your system, and the orange is the severity of how you feel. So at around 7 days, you start to feel worse and worse and worse. And at around 14, 15, 16, 17 days, if you're going to be part of that 80%, 82% cohort of people who get it mildly, you'll feel terrible, but you'll start to come out of it. But there is certainly evidence that I have seen that even after you feel better, you're still carrying a viral load for some time afterwards, and you could still be infectious. So it's not like, hey guys, I'm feeling much better today. We've got that in our office right now. We've got a young lady who was sick last week with flu. She hasn't been tested, but I don't think that she has the coronavirus.
Is this in South Africa? Or
This is here, just at our office.
Not the one in Hong Kong.
And and her fiance at the same time began feeling ill, and we said, no, I'm afraid you cannot come back to work. So when I get a little bit to the next part of this, which is about business as usual, I'll explain why we're using her as a test bed. So the severity of the symptoms at around 21 days, but even though you've come off it and you may be infectious, and you're going to still feel like you've been in a fight. You're still going to feel pretty rotten. Those 17 to 18% of people who go on to develop serious conditions and die, it's generally been around 28 days. So if we look back 2.5 weeks to Iran, in Iran they announced 2 cases, and on the same day they announced 2 deaths. For me that was like, damn, you guys are a month behind on this. Because people don't get it and die 2 days later. And that's why we've seen just the most absolutely appalling outbreak in Iran. I do believe that it's been seeding in South Africa much longer than what we heard about, and I do believe we are going to start to see. So another fallacy. Besides, it's just the flu. It doesn't affect us in the heat. I don't believe that to be true. And the reason for that is that I've seen what's happened in Singapore. Yes, we will have a flu season. Yes, there probably will be more severe cases in South Africa, not only because winter is coming, but also because we've been given this gift, I like to think, of SAA. If you have one thing that's come out of SAA and out of the government mismanagement of all of our funds, is that they stopped flying from Beijing to South Africa and they stopped flying from Hong Kong to South Africa at the end of last year. So we only actually had Cathay Pacific coming in, and then via Doha and via Dubai. But of course now that's thrown right out of the window. You can't blame the Chinese, because the infections that are going on around the world now and that came into South Africa came out of Italy. That's where this chap in KwaZulu-Natal came on holiday. So that's going to just inform you kind of a general idea, like, hang on a second, we can't assume that everybody who's feeling great is actually not going to infect the rest of us. We have to allow in our work plan that people are going to be off if they're sick. If they're sick or some of their family members are sick, we're going to have to allow self-isolation. So let's quickly cover that. There's two separate words that you're going to hear a lot about: quarantine, self-isolation. Very different. Quarantine came from Venice in Italy, in fact, where they're locked down right now, when the Black Plague was in Europe in the Middle Ages, and they said, whoa, nobody's coming in here, we're quarantining ourselves, we're isolating ourselves, nobody is sick. So if in this room right now, none of us are sick, and we say, hang on, we're locking the door, we're not going to have anybody else come in here, we're going to be safe. Self-isolation is when somebody either has it, that's what's happening in KwaZulu-Natal right now, the chap got it, his wife now has it, his two children are they're not testing positive, but they are presumed infected. So they're isolated. They shut down their school. And the doctor who treated them is in self-isolation as well. That's removal from society. That's something that we're all going to need to consider with staff who have families who may be ill. You don't want them bringing it to work. And they will be forced by the government, if we can expect the government to enforce it, to self-isolate.
So it'll become like a law that if something happens, you're forced to.
So
I mean, it could be really abused, couldn't it?
It could be, but my estimation on this, from what I'm seeing out of Italy right now, so Italy is applying triage. I'd never imagined I would hear that in my life. That's a wartime word. Triage in wartime is when you're in a battle and the guys who've been injured come into the medics, and the medics say, that guy's got a broken leg, he can wait. That guy's got a torn shoulder, he can wait. That guy's stomach has been blown out, we need to work on him first. Actually, no, you know what? There's no chance he's going to survive. We're going to work on this guy. So that's what Italy is applying right now. If you look on Sky News, you can see tents outside Italian hospitals with a big sign up, triage. That's what they're applying. So I believe what will happen in South Africa, because our health system is going to become very quickly overloaded, is that they will say, stay at home. Stay at home. I don't believe that there is any country in the world that will have either the resources or, excuse me ladies, or the balls to implement the kind of draconian measures that China implemented. I believe America is going to go the other way. They're just going to declare martial law, and it's going to just be complete mess. But they're not going to, bolt up and block entire apartment buildings to prevent people from coming out. I think what will happen here, they're going to say, hey, if you're sick, stay at home and try and deal with it yourself. And that's going to have repercussions that I don't know yet and how that's going to work. Okay, so let's just talk about the spread and why I'm so big on prevention is better than cure. This virus is spread via the mucous membranes, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the female genitalia, and the anus. There is definite proof that the virus has been found alive in feces. So just remember that when we come back. What we also do know, but I cannot give you unequivocal exact figures, is that the virus remains alive on certain hard surfaces. Countertops, money. China is destroying money, certainly coins, stainless steel, cooking utensils, knives and forks in restaurants. It does remain, and they are talking about between 7 and 9 days that it can remain alive. So it doesn't like the sun. I believe on clothing, much less, isn't going to stay active and alive. But I think as a great exercise for everybody that's listening in, and to take away from this is to immediately start being aware of how often you touch your face. I think you will be absolutely flabbergasted how often. What I've read is that we touch our faces between 20 and 30 times an hour. We all sit there. We're like this, we rub our nose, we get a scratch in our eyes. If I've shaken Terry's hand and he's infected, I rub my eye, that's it, it's over. This is the most unbelievably easily transmitted virus. And so we've got to do everything that we can to unlearn what we do and how we go about our daily lives. So I think for all of your staff to put in some easy training. This is not something that you're going to be able to go out and just develop a one-page document and it fits all. It's going to require a collaboration from all of you to come up with solutions that work in your executive, in your middle management, your drivers, your warehouse staff, your cleaners. That this is about mobilizing everybody. This isn't going to only affect the sick, it's not only going to affect the old, and that's why I started by saying I am nobody and I'm everybody. I am me and I am you. Unless we all come together collectively, we're going to be in real trouble. So these here have no prescription. You can buy them from Spectacle Warehouse just over the road. That's where I bought a few pairs. And I started this 3 or 4 weeks ago. Whenever I go into supermarkets, if I go into the shops, I just wear those. Just to stop me from rubbing my eye. Just to remind me. I carry a pen around my neck now. I don't accept any pen from anybody in any shop. If I have to punch I take my credit card, I try to swipe it first rather than sticking it in, but if I have to put my PIN in, I'm putting my PIN in like that. I carry a small bottle of hand sanitizer with me everywhere I go. Alcohol hand sanitizer with 60 to 70% alcohol in it will kill the virus virtually immediately. And I'm generous with this. This is just a quick one, but in my car I've got a much bigger bottle and I refill this. And a great way for all of your staff is to teach them about hand hygiene. And I've got a poster to show you, and you will be amazed if you look at a YouTube video and you see just how difficult it is to cover all of your hands. Somebody on YouTube last week put on a pair of rubber latex surgeon's gloves, dipped their hand in some blue paint, and they said, oh, I'm just going to wash my hands like I normally do. And then they held it up there. Wow, they were just amazing amount of space that wasn't even covered by the blue. And then they said, right, let's do it again, and let's do it the way we should. And the way that we should, a great way to do it with your staff is to say, sing happy birthday, mini mani kue. You've got to sing happy birthday twice while you wash your hands with soap and water. This isn't just about going like that, cheers, we go on with life. This is going to be about changing the way we do things to try to slow down the spread, because we need prevention for as long as possible, so that one, the authorities can develop a vaccine, or the health establishment can develop a vaccine, and that this unbelievable pressure that is about to descend upon our health system can be just released and mitigated. There is a lovely graph available that is really similar to this, which is our health system if we just allow this to go, and our health system if we slow it down. This green curve actually goes all the way out here, and it becomes a much longer, lower curve, way better outcomes if we just prevent this for as long as possible. I also carry with me just a Ziploc bag. I never ever touch, if I can help it, coins. If I get coins in the shop, I just say to the guy like that. If a car parking guy, I just give them like that. I do not want to. I have no idea where that is. So these are just super quick, easy little things that I'm doing and that I'm trying to teach myself. Don't. And probably the single most important thing beyond that is teaching your staff, teaching your family, teaching your children how to cough. So I go like, just normal. I then go to your door handle, I open and I say, cheers, thank you very much for the meeting, and I go home, but I'm infected. Anybody that touches that door handle, if it's not disinfected, will get infected. So it's about super easy things, but you have to learn it. You have to really actively, and I've been experimenting on myself. I know how difficult that is to do it. But these are things that we have to really try and train ourselves to change our habits. So there's a lovely saying that came out of Australia for when we operate with a tissue. If you operate with a tissue, open the tissue up, cough or sneeze into it, squeeze it closed like that, and throw it away. And it's catch it, kill it, bin it. So you'll be able to do the research, you'll be able to download posters, you'll be able to find things, but this is about educating all of your staff and deciding what level of education you're going to give for the different levels of staff. Because we had to separate within our head office which staff members are going to get this information, because they're the ones that are going to need to take laptops home, and which ones are going to get that information because we're providing them with emergency food which we're going to deliver to their homes. So in our office protocols 4 weeks ago, when I gave this prevention is better than cure talk, the first thing that we did, we said every person in the head office, their desk is sacrosanct. That is their quarantine zone. Nobody is allowed to touch their desk. If an IT person has to come to resolve an IT problem, they have to stand there with him, they have to watch him use hand sanitizer, and when he leaves their desk, they have to spray it down and disinfect it. We said that there was no surface cleaning of any individual work area by office cleaning staff. All staff members take their responsibility for keeping their workstation, their area clean, their keyboard, their mouse, their desks, their office cassettes that they work with. Nobody is allowed to enter our head office in Newlands without applying hand sanitizer, which is at the front door. When I came into your door, I pressed your ringer with my finger, and then I looked and there was nothing. and I looked into one of your doorways, and the layout of your office is very, very similar to the layout of our office, and I can see that you would be able to do that relatively easy, to say, guys, this is your area, do not allow anybody to touch it. We've said to all staff members, there's no shaking hands, there's no hugs and kisses when we have meetings with suppliers, if we have meetings with our customers, if we have meetings with anybody coming into the building, there's no shaking hands, and there's no ladies giving hugs and kisses. We do the elbow bump, you can do a namaste, you can do anything. This is not going to go on forever. But while it does, we have to exercise extreme caution, because we would like our business to be able to continue for as long as possible, because we believe prevention is better than cure. We have recommended that all staff regularly clean their cell phones with alcohol wipes, which we've bought, those little surgical wipes. They cost 50 rands a box of 200. If you're going for a vaccination, you just have it. Our cell phones are, we don't think anything of placing them on a counter. We're using them, we're touching them every day. We believe that that's probably going to be part of making the spread easier. We've instituted really, really rigorous toilet hygiene, cleaning really regularly. We have encouraged all staff to put the lid down when flushing. We have posters in our bathrooms. Because of the aerosolization, when you flush the loo, I think we would probably be horrified if we could see microscopically what is going on with the cloud of aerosol. And with this evidence that is emerging that the virus is remaining alive in feces, we need to make sure that we are really trying to just keep it dampened down, and having the toilet areas really being kept sanitary to an almost manic degree. We have removed all cloth towels from our building. Particularly, we didn't ever have any in our toilets. We've had paper towels, but we did have cloth towels in the tea and kitchen area. Everything is paper. All surfaces are wiped down using paper towels, so that they can be wiped, disinfected, and thrown away. None of the blue type of cleaning cloths or sponges that you would see, nothing. This is about clean, disinfect, throw away. We understand that it probably isn't great for the environment, but this is going to be great for humanity right now. We encourage the staff to use a tissue or paper to open the door and close the door behind them in the toilet after they've used the toilet, so that we're just trying to reduce contact on some of those hard surfaces where there is high suspicion that the virus can remain alive for an extended period of time. And then afterwards, that staff immediately use hand sanitizer when they are back at their desk. Now, that's going to be a challenge for you, because you are behind the curve on this one. Speed is everything. Now's the time to be proactive and not reactive, but unfortunately, you guys are going to be reacting right now, and I don't know where you're going to find hand sanitizer, but you've got a great bunch of customers, I imagine, that you're distributing to, and I wouldn't be looking to go to Clicks or Discam or any of the medical suppliers where I was able to procure what we needed 4 weeks ago, and now, as I look at a photograph on my phone from a half an hour ago, those shelves are stripped bare. But if you have anybody that you are supplying from Dettol, I don't know if that comes from Rick and Coleman or from wherever, I'd be contacting your supply base and say, man, we need alcohol, hand sanitizer, and we need it for our trucks, we need it for our office staff, we need it for everybody in your warehouse, your distribution centers, to really just try to keep hands clean, because not everybody can get to a tap with soap and clean for two rounds of happy birthday, and the hand sanitizer is a good way to push back at that. Jik is a great killer of this virus. Bleach, and it only needs to be in 1%. So the Jik you can buy, 5 liter containers of Jik is 3.5%. It's not going to be great for your leather belts and your leather bottoms of your beautiful ladies' shoes. This is going to be about us probably having to change and say, hey, we're going to come to work in rubber-soled shoes, and we're going to have clothes that might, they may get bleached. But we have bought from Dischem, 25 spray bottles, and we just take half bleach, half water, and they are in the kitchen, in the toilets, and the entrance hall, and they are used for regular, through the day, sanitizing of surfaces, so that we're just trying to prevent. Six weeks ago, we implemented a parcel and sample quarantine in our head office. I think that that's largely gone by now, because there's pretty much nothing coming out of China. But if there is anything coming in with UPS, DHL, send and receive, and it's coming out of China, man, I wouldn't be touching that for 14 days. I'm not so concerned with the box, but we got the box, we made a quarantine zone within our basement of our head office, which is a storeroom. And those samples, we said to our customer, I'm sorry, for your protection, we are not going to be delivering samples until we are certain, 14 days have gone by. So I don't know, if you have a lot of parcels coming back and forth, but that's something that we certainly took up quite early. For our staff, and I don't know how you might do this, but for our staff, we immediately set up a WhatsApp health group, so that information could be circulated among the team members that needed to know. We're using it right now. If staff are not coming to work because they say somebody in their family has flu or they're sick, we've been very, very, very strict on this. I said, I'll fire you if you abuse this system, and I'll deal with the consequences later. I have never in 35 years of working said that to any staff member. But this is not about abusing the system. We've said to every staff member, if you feel sick, you think you've got the flu, please do not come to work. But you still need to provide a doctor's certificate, and you take a photograph of the doctor's certificate and you put it onto the health group, so that we can review it. And we're then taking the decision on when you can come back to work, and we take that financial decision. We are happy that that is not necessarily going to be taken from your normal sick leave. If your doctor says you're ready to come back, and we then say, no, we'd like you to stay away for another week, or because somebody in your family is not well, we will bear that as paid leave. We're prepared to accept that, because we are taking this prevention is better than cure very, very seriously. Within that WhatsApp health group, we absolutely are not allowing any spreading of rumors. It's fact-based evidence. If it goes on, in fact, funny enough, I haven't found the staff really using it. It's really kind of, I'm not feeling well, here's my certificate, and it's actually working really well. I thought people would be trying to start posting, I've read this and I've read that, but fortunately that hasn't happened. All of our vehicles have hand sanitizer in them, and we are really, really pushing the drivers to make sure they're using it all the time, and to deep clean the vans regularly, the steering wheels, the gear lever, the door handles, on a really regular basis. We've also taken the decision to pay as a company for all staff members, as well as all of the people that work for us outside of work, to have the flu shot for this year without charge. It's not available yet. When I phoned this morning, they said it'll be coming in at the end of March or the first week of April. It will do absolutely nothing to protect you against the COVID-19. But we believe that in the prevention is better than cure. If you can keep your immune system strong, you'll be less susceptible to catching it, and in the event of you catching it, your body will be better able to fight it. I have never, in 58 years, had a flu injection. This year I'm like, I don't care, give it to me, I'm ready. Because certainly the doctors are recommending that. As part of the prevention is better than cure, I discussed with our staff protocols for at home, because if the staff are bringing something from home to work, that's going to affect work. So we've asked the staff to really have careful monitoring of all family members and to disclose to us if any family members are not well. We will take exception, or we'll make an exception and say, look, if your family member's not well, actually you don't come to work. We're accepting higher absenteeism right now because we believe that it will be much more advantageous for the rest of the staff while we are trying to keep our organization running for as long as possible. We have asked our staff to please consider the reduction of attendance at large venues. We have an office where 95% of our staff members are female, and we've got quite a few younger females who like to go to festivals, they like to go partying, and we've asked that they please just think about what they're doing to just be sensible, and I believe that that's going to become a more and more important message as we go forward. We do have some staff who travel on taxis and who travel on trains, as I'm sure you have plenty, and I haven't yet got a solution how to deal with it, but we have given every one of those staff members hand sanitizers, and I've said, hey, you open that taxi handle, you sit in the taxi, you apply it, you wash it when you get out of the taxi, you immediately before you go, so you don't go home and take something into your home. We have asked all of our staff to put aside money to consider buying extra cleaning materials for their own homes, to do what I've suggested here. And we've asked them to call their children's schools so that they ask the schools if they have a plan, what they're going to do, just so that we have some form of information that we know how to handle a matter if a child is now home from school and both parents work. We're going to all have to deal with these realities, and how we deal with it. I don't believe we're going to be able to have a hard and fast rule. We're going to have to be a little bit flexible during these uncertain times. We've asked our staff to really reduce their cash handling, and if any of them don't have a debit card, they can go to their bank, they can go to Capitec. All of our staff are paid electronically, and if they have a debit card, they can be doing exactly what we're doing, and they can punch in and they're just not handling cash. I mean, certainly from the Chinese experience, it seems that is an absolute certainty, that cash is a transmitter of the virus. Okay, so that was the first discussion and that we had, and then a week later I felt, well, hang on a second, we've covered that, and that's all very good, but what are we going to do about the business? Okay, what happens if this comes into our head office? And fortunately, I had thought in 2009 about this when that was coming, and so I had some sort of a framework. But then I said, hang on a second, let's have a discussion and let's share the information, and we're going to call it business as usual. We want to try, all of us. I mean, you can see governments in particular are going out of their way to try and say, hey, nothing's wrong with the economy, let's pump up the share price. Well, today there's been absolute mayhem on the stock market. Yeah. And this is just the beginning of some very, very turbulent times ahead. But we're all business people, and we want to try to keep our businesses operating for absolutely as long as possible. And when Terry asked me on Thursday to come and speak, one of the reasons, this is the first time I have spoken in public outside of a family gathering at my parents' birthday ever. I'm not a public speaker, I'm just a businessman. But one of the reasons why I immediately agreed to come and speak when Terry asked me was because the two businesses that I have seen remain open no matter how bad it gets are supermarkets and chemists. Overseas, they're still operating. They're operating in a very different way that we might imagine right now. Chemists are blocked off with plastic with a little slide, and the chemist is in there, and you come and make up the parcel and it gets slid down, and then the money gets handed and goes off to get disinfected. I mean, it's like something that can't even imagine.
Is that in China as we speak?
That's in China as we speak. They are allowing, they've got various quarantine measures where one person from the family is allowed out of lockdown once a week to go out to get food, but it's quite incredible when you see they come through, looks like an airport security, they have to walk over bleach impregnated carpeting, they get temperature censored, they have their ID taken, they then go to a table where anything that they've got shopping is sprayed and disinfected. They are sprayed head to toe with disinfectant, and then they're allowed back into their compound again after they've been to get. But as I understand
Is
it,
this only in the one city though, Nick? Or in
no, this is across China now.
Across China.
So yeah. So look at Italy now. I mean, if you just take Italy as an example, 2 weeks ago there was nothing. Now, yesterday, 19 million people in quarantine, including Milan, the financial capital of Italy, including Venice, one of the largest tourist attractions in the world. I don't believe that it's going to work. I don't believe that it's too porous. They've got this kind of grey quarantine where if you're from out of Italy, you can still fly home, and so I mean that's a completely separate discussion. But supermarkets will need to still provide goods, and as I understand it, you distribute for supermarkets. So it's going to be critical that you find a way to keep your infrastructure operational, even if it is at a hampered and minimized level, and you're finding new ways to operate. So what we did, and we are much smaller than you, so I'm not dictating in any way how you do it. This is going to be about more minds coming together will find the solutions that are right for your organization. What we did in our business is that we immediately got every person in every department to have a look if we could silo the department all the way down to one person. That if we said that we are working together as a team, we immediately said, all right, what can I take from you? What can you take from me? That we do not need to collaborate. So that in the event that I get sick, you can still keep going with your division, which is a profit center. So we're relatively easy in our company because we've got a kitchenware division, a dining division, a beauty division, a storage solution division, a supermarket division. So we're able to kind of ring fence. And if our key account manager in kitchenware went down and she was unwell, at least the person in the dining section is still operating, and hopefully we're still able to distribute goods. So we believe that for us right now, that siloing is a good way to try to minimize risk. We immediately identified all of our staff. So out of our head office of 23, we identified 14 could work from home with a laptop, and I immediately went out and bought new laptops, had them loaded with the latest software, and we loaded in particular Zoom, which is very much like we are operating with here, and Microsoft SharePoint, and we've now identified our critical files on our server which operates in the office, and we have already moved those to a zone on the server that our IT department can migrate that up to the cloud at a moment in time where we feel that sufficient staff need to work from away from head office. And we don't think that that's very long until that's going to happen. Already we're busy testing it with our one lady who has been off ill, and I see that absenteeism is going to go up probably quite quickly. This is about speed is everything in two ways. We have to react now at light speed, and it is going to move at light speed. So there's no time to delay. We've done also a really deep review of our file server to make sure that it is robust. We've done some off-site copies and removed them so that we know that we're already, I'm pretty careful about removal of backups and duplication of information, but we're just making sure that our IT systems are really robust. My personal belief is that this is going to be a game changer in the world going forward. I think when they talk about the law of unintended consequences, I suspect that all of us are going to be far more open to remote working in the future. And so we want to gear ourselves up for that. At our warehouse in Epping, we have duplicated all functions. So from 4 weeks ago, we said, fast track any training so that if somebody goes down, there is a backup. I don't yet have a solution on whether we should be distancing those people. That is something that's evolving, and that's certainly something that you're going to need to, I would imagine, consider in your organization within your warehouse. How do you separate functions? How do you duplicate functions? So if somebody is on your DI dispatch computer and they go down sick, that the whole system doesn't come to a halt. We're a much smaller organization than you are, but we have one container every day coming from our customer, and it comes to the back door of the warehouse and we load it, and then it goes to their DC. I understand that you are much bigger than we are, but these are decisions that you're going to need to think about. How do we keep our organization running under circumstances that none of us could ever imagine might happen in our lifetimes? And then the last thing that we did was we made sure that we got a full contact list of all staff members' families, so that we've got a tree of information that can flow back and forth. And then after that, another week went by, and then I felt, hang on a second, we're saying we're going to try to prevent us getting this. We're all good. The business is going to keep going, we hope, as long as possible. But hey, what about our people? What about the people? They're going to be scared. And they're going to be worried. And some of them really, some of my best educated friends have told me that I'm manic. How are those guys that are living out on the Cape Flats going to deal with this information? They're going to be getting stuff that tells them that they can be cured by garlic, like our previous president said for HIV. So we thought, hang on a second, we've got to come up with a strategy to inform all of our staff members for their own families. And so the last chat that I gave to them, which was at the beginning of last week, was called Prepare for the Worst and Hope for the Best. We immediately said to all of our staff members, and fortunately it was right at month end, and we said, guys, this is serious. We've never faced anything like this before, and we don't believe that you've ever faced anything like this before. Please, we know money is tight, business isn't great as it is already in South Africa. Don't go for a hairdo. Don't buy any clothes. Don't buy your kid that new soccer ball or tennis racket that they think they need. Don't buy anything that you don't need. And we said that from our cleaning staff all the way to our executive team. We said, keep your powder dry. Keep the ammunition that you've got. If you have any spare money, keep it, because we believe that you're going to need it. We then proposed 4 things that we believe that all of you that are in this room, and certainly your middle management, should be thinking about doing right now. And these are from, I'm not a doomsday prepper. I'm not a nut job. I'm not a person that goes out hunting or anything like that. We just believe these are 4 things that have a very low cost, but they have a really high potential benefit in the event that this coronavirus comes into our towns and cities and overwhelms the society for a period of time. I don't want to sound like a complete doomsdayer. This will pass us by. if we look at the 1918 Spanish flu, which I believe this is going to probably be very, very similar to it, it was kind of over in about 18 months, but it happened in 3 waves. The first wave came, it wasn't too bad. The second wave was just unbelievably deadly, died out. The third wave came, was really deadly, and then they managed to get a handle on it. The 1918 Spanish flu killed about 50 million people, 50 to 100 million. They don't really know. It wasn't from Spain, it was just that Spain was neutral during the First World War. And so they were not running a propaganda campaign. The British and the Americans didn't want to say, hey, our soldiers are dying like flies, because the Germans would have said, shit, we can just sit back and we don't need to worry, because they'll eventually all die off. We don't need to fight anymore, and the Germans were doing the same. It's only that Spain was the one, they were neutral, and they said, hey, hang on a second, a whole lot of our population are dying. What's going on here? And then it became known as Spanish flu. But it killed more people than everybody in the First World War, everybody in the Second World War, and every other war subsequently. The Vietnam War, the Korean War, the Iran-Iraq War, and the Afghan War killed more people in 18 months. Now, if this is anything like it, we're going to see, I'm afraid, things in our lifetime that none of us ever imagined that we might see. 4 things. Go out and buy sufficient food, toiletries, and household goods for a period of isolation. How long is that isolation? I cannot tell you. Each of you are going to need to make your own informed decision, and what you decide collectively as an executive team needs to filter down to your staff as to what you think you should recommend that they do. I don't know how long that is, but I will go back to saying that supermarkets and chemists are the 2 things that I have seen remain open. But something that probably should be taken into consideration is that if supermarkets do stay open and one of your family members or yourselves can go out and get it, or you choose to have home delivery, is that food contaminated or not? Has one of the shelf packers or the Unitrans workers who brought it touched it and infected it? So probably you're going to want to say, hang on a second, I'm buying that food, there's an outbreak out there, let me put it in the garage or a storeroom or a cupboard away, and I'm just going to let it sit there for 14 days, or I'm going to put it in the sun to try to reduce it. We're not talking about fresh fruit and veggies here, we're talking about food that is going to keep you alive in the event that you need it. These are food basics, and they're not going out and buying things that you normally wouldn't eat. On the food score, what we took as a company decision last week was we went to all of our staff members who are working in our stores, our shelf packers, our lower level drivers, and we said to them, this is a 1-day only offer. We've identified, using a few of our staff members, a list of basic foodstuffs, which was rice, sump, beans, ricoffee, long life milk, a few other items. I can't remember them all right now, but you would be able to very easily with your staff members develop something like that. We said this list of ingredients, so 10 kilograms of rice, 10 kilograms of sump, comes to 2,000 rands. As a company, we will pay 1,000 rands, and you need to agree to allow us to deduct 1,000 rand from this coming month's salary. We will buy it. We've boxed it into cardboard boxes, and our drivers are going to go individually to those homes and deliver them grey. We believe that our staff would potentially be victims of violence if the people in the community realize that they have managed to put aside foodstuff for a period of time where they may not wish to go out of the door. And we have asked those staff members to please treat that, put it into a cupboard, and do not touch it until they absolutely need to. We feel that that's an inexpensive but potentially very high benefit to those staff. To your middle and upper management and to yourselves, I would say, of the 4 things: food for a period of isolation that you may need to take, whether it's somebody in your family that's infected and you've been forced to isolate, or whether it is a voluntary isolation that you have chosen to remove yourselves for whatever reason you have. The second thing is to prepare and review any medical kit that you have at home. Go to your doctors or staff to a clinic, and if you have prescription medication, get yourself 3 months or 6 months supply of that. Particularly if you've got aging parents who might be on a medication that is really necessary for their survival. And then on top of that, to review and have a look at a medical kit that's going to get you through a period that isn't necessarily usual. So for me, the things that I looked at when looking at the medical kit, and I'm a sailor, we live for between 4 and 5 months of the year on a boat in Europe. And so I have a really extensive medical kit. And I have repeated that here, which is probably way more than you may wish to do. But the things that I really consider from my sailing days, and which I believe here, is burn shield, so that if any of my daughters or my wife are cooking and they burn themselves and we can't get to a GP and we can't get to a hospital. Likewise, if I'm busy working on the house and I cut myself and I cannot get to go and have stitches, that I've got steri strips. These are really inexpensive things to think about, but which potentially could have a really high benefit for you. The third thing that we asked our staff to consider, please, was to go home, and it doesn't matter whether they live in Khayelitsha or Langa or Plumstead or Fishhook or Sun Valley, and just look at their home security. Just review the home security and say, hey, where are my vulnerable points? What do I need to keep an eye on? There have been cases, even in China, which has got draconian military and police system. There have been incidences of societal breakdown. And I am concerned in South Africa with our high levels of violence and potential for societal conflict, that when things get serious, people may not operate rationally. If we already have people in Pick and Pay Constantia and around the country going and stripping shelves, and we see videos of women in Australia having absolute fist fights and being arrested over toilet paper, I don't think that we can assume that in South Africa we're going to have a necessarily civilized outcome with that. And the fourth thing that we asked our staff to consider, and again, now is the time to be proactive, and speed is of the essence, because you are behind the curve on this one. And I don't know where you would get masks, glasses, goggles. They are still available. So we've said at an extreme level, if one of you were chosen as the designated person to leave your home in the event of us being in forced lockdown, you're going to need a number of things. You're going to need to try and get yourself some masks. N95s, none available in the country. FFP2s, which are almost like a N95, hardly available. FFP1s, yes, Buco had tons last week. Those little surgical paper masks. So whether they help to protect you is questionable. What they do are a couple of things. They prevent you from touching your mouth and your nose. And if you do cough and maybe you are infected, they certainly would prevent the aerosolization to others. Inexpensive plastic goggles, either just this, but this is not really going to help you, but you find them at Builder's Warehouse at Buco. They're 20 Rand each, and they look like a pair of swimming goggles. At least it will help if somebody in the area, if you've got to go out into the community, if your drivers are now being exposed to the back door at a Pick and Pay or a Checkers' delivery bay, you may want them to be wearing latex gloves or nitrile gloves. You may want them to have goggles on, because you want to try to keep your staff members operational for as long as possible. We have also recommended to those staff members that can to get the white Tyvek suits that you see the healthcare workers using overseas. They're not expensive. I think they're 40 or 50 Rand from Pinar Brothers and Leg and Vessels. You may have suppliers that have them, but some kind of barrier clothing so that in the event you need to go out, if you are the executive team and you now have to go to rally your troops out in one of the warehouses or one of your facilities, and you have identified yourselves as being key personnel, you've got to do everything you can. You need to treat yourself. I can't say you need to. In my view, it would be important to treat yourself as though you were a doctor on the front lines of this. And so to inform your decision, you just need to look at what are those doctors wearing. They are dressed to the hilt. So if you can get goggles, you can get a face plate, which they use just for the guys operating the weed eaters on the side of the road and the garden services. They cost 40 Rand. But boy, that's going to give you a lot of protection if you are in an environment where you're exposed to people who are potentially infected. And just keep remembering that you've got this period of asymptomatic transmission of the COVID-19. We've also recommended that our staff go out and buy extra bleach and the sprayers so that at home they can keep their homes, whether they're in Langa or they are in Bishop's Court, it doesn't matter. There are a lot of other items on my radar, but it's just too much to go into. Those 4 things are really critical. They don't cost a lot. But if you sit back and you just consider the implications of what other countries have faced, we've been given these binoculars to look. And certainly what they are facing is going to inform the decisions that we make here. And it isn't going to be next year, it could be next week. And that's why speed is everything right now. I did say before that there needs to be sensible discussion with your family members and your staff to have with their family members so that they decide what they do for their family, you decide what you do for your family. Everybody's going to be different. If you have children, if you've got aging parents, if you have the financial ability to stay home, if it's a double working family, everybody's going to be different. But we don't believe at this stage, I don't believe at this stage the right decision is to cut ourselves off and silo ourselves from information. I absolutely do not want to cause panic. I am not in any way advocating panic buying and going and buying yourself 300 rolls of toilet paper. Absolutely not. This is about making informed, sensible decisions to protect yourselves, your family, and to allow this organization to continue to operate for as long as possible and under trying circumstances. I'm happy to leave this with you or send it to you, Terry, but we have put up in our head office posters pretty much everywhere, at the door, in the toilets, because this is about making people aware, really getting it in your face. And there are many other things that you can pick up from this original pandemic plan that I went and presented to the school. I developed a absenteeism spreadsheet that people could track. So, certainly you've probably got HR systems that you're able to see that there was a planning checklist for the school. Again, when I read through it this morning, I was like, oh, well, if you say if any child has flu-like symptoms, they should immediately be separated from other students. Well, okay, you could easily say if any warehouse staff or office staff has it, yeah, okay, so hang on a second, and now they must go home. So I think there are some things that you can throw it away, use it if you like, and then also a letter which we sent out, which was to be sent out to all the schools. So I think I will just really leave you with one thought or analogy. I actually, if I hadn't been running a little bit out of time, I wanted to stop at the Quick Spa on Rosmead Avenue and buy an onion, because that's what I've come up with as an analogy for where we are at. You know, an onion's got that crispy kind of outer layer of protective skin on it, and for me that is civilization as we know it. It's about this grand experiment of globalization that we've undertaken in the last 60, 70, 100 years. And it is very, very quickly, in my opinion, being stripped away and falling off. Airlines under severe pressure. India saying they're blocking 27 key ingredients for antibiotic drugs and keeping them within India so that in case their population requires that, they will at least have that, and yet those drugs are required by the United States in order to produce antibiotics. And I think we will maybe see going forward a change in strategic production of certain items in the future, where we say, hang on a second, we're not going to just go cheapest is best and we're just going to go to China or India. We need to keep certain products that we need for the functioning of our country going. So for me, it's about, in South Africa, globally, but in South Africa, we've already begun peeling off that outer skin of the onion. And then within that onion, we have layers. And those layers are going to be our freedoms. They're going to be our ability to continue to operate as a society and as an economy, which we desperately need to be able to put food on tables. And unfortunately, my view of that onion is that everywhere from here, from today, from right now, every layer that we peel off, our fingers are going to get dirty and smelly, and it's going to cause us tears. This is not going to be a comfortable or pretty ride ahead. But if we are prepared, if we take speed, if we're proactive and not reactive, we can make a difference. That's it.
Thank you, Nick. Well done. It was sort of certainly gave me a bit of a wake-up call. Are there any questions for Nick? Just in terms of the latest stats, how many people do you have a feel? I mean, it's obviously a moving target because it's.
So declared figures.
Declared figures
this morning are about 105,000. So I track this.
105,000 affected.
A couple of weeks ago, if you just have a moment, we can talk about a couple of things that you might hear coming up from a medical point of view. The first one is called the R0. So the R0 is the infectability rate. So that means if one person gets it, how many other people does he or she give it to? And right now, the best estimation is between 2 to 3 other people. So if I get it, I'm going to shake your hand, you've got it, I'm going to sneeze, you're going to touch the door, you've got it, and you might get it. But direct from me to 2 to 3 other people who will then go. Now, that very quickly leads to a situation where the numbers, as we've seen in Iran, as we've seen in Italy, don't go linearly, they go exponentially. It's like, there's a few, and it just goes whoop, like that. And the reason why it does, so I'm going to use your paper, is here I am. I'm Nick. And I now give it to 3 people. But in 6 to 7 days, if we take a week as being the average incubation period where you, before you start to show symptoms, again, be careful of not false information, but be careful of sensational information. They talk about, that guy, Chinese guy, 27 days, and then they showed symptoms. Well, These are things we don't know. What we definitely know is it's 7 days. 7 days later,
On average. So it could be more than 3.
it could be more than 3. So within that are people who are called super spreaders. There was one woman in Daegu in South Korea who attended church, and they reckon that she infected 1,000 people in that church.
So how many people, so you said there's only 100,000 people worldwide who have been diagnosed with it?
That are infected
That are
currently.
infected.
There are people that have recovered.
Yeah, okay, so
And
they're
the
currently infected.
the current death rate, the case fatality rate, was revised by the World Health Organization last week from 1% to 3.4%. That is absolutely astronomical. If anybody turns to you and says, this is just the flu kills about 0.1%. So even at a case fatality rate of 1%, that's still 10 times more deadly than the flu. People will also say to you, we've got HIV, we've got tuberculosis, we have to deal with cancer. Yes, they all take the desperately terrible afflictions to humanity, but they generally take an extended period of time, and we have something that we can fight against it. Here, humans are being used as guinea pigs, which they need to be, I'm afraid, if you catch it. And that's why I'm saying prevention is better than cure. I prefer not to be a guinea pig, because now they're trying mass doses of intravenous vitamin C, they're trying malaria drugs, they're trying HIV antiviral drugs, they're trying everything to try to stop these cytokine storms in the people who are succumbing to the disease. But you can see very quickly how, in Italy, 2 weeks ago we had that. Well, it wasn't just that. It had been seeding like it was in Iran, seeding for a month, but then it just explodes. So if in South Africa we've got cases circulating now, we'll start to hear, but then it will quickly take off. Because if you have a look at the figures, Johns Hopkins has got a fantastic website. I don't know if any of you are on it, but I can send it to Terry. I track it on a daily basis, and it basically gives all of the data in graph form. It gives the infected, the countries by infection, by case fatality rate, and it becomes very easy to become overwhelmed with the data. So for me, the world has shrunk now. In the beginning 7 weeks ago, I was looking to China to inform the decisions that we made, and that remained for a really long time, because you had one case in the UK and one in Sri Lanka, and and a few in Hong Kong and a few in Singapore. Now that it has ramped up and it's around the world, it is absolutely clear that we're not going to escape this. You need to inform yourselves, but in my view, there is just no chance that we're going to escape this. So now my world has shrunk. Yes, I am reviewing the information. I get up at 4 in the morning and I'm looking through all the sites and that, but I'm scanning them. I'm not in-depth reading unless they are the Journal of American Medicine or the Imperial College in London. I'm reading medical texts just to try to understand certain things. Now my focus is on South Africa. Now my focus is on, hang on a second, what's happening here and how fast is this going to come at us, so that we are not reacting. We're taking proactive decisions as a business and as a family to make the decisions that are going to give us the best outcome. Now I'm going to I'll go back to, so we said just very quickly the R0 is the infectiousness rate. We've covered the case fatality rate. Take that with a pinch of salt. What we hope will happen is, as more of those 80% of the people who have mild symptoms are more easily detected, I'm certain that they will find a detection for this that is longer than the 2 to 3 days at the moment. They will find a way to, go and have a swab, stick it in the machine. Okay, you're infected. hopefully, as we see more of that 80%, that case fatality rate will start to drop. But there has already been a mutation of the virus into an S and a P strain, and that's why they're thinking potentially in Italy there's this now that Wuhan managed to really press down and apply very draconian measures, and that was the original strain. And then it mutated, as viruses do, and they can either become more infectious, more deadly, or they burn themselves out. And this one that we're seeing in Iran and the one that we're seeing in Italy potentially is from one that is more infectious and is providing more complications for people. So I just would like to just very quickly end with something that really was only really crystallized for me yesterday morning. And that is that I believe that there are going to be two camps of people that will exist on this subject. And unfortunately, even though I've lain down thinking for a few hours about it yesterday, I don't see how those two camps can coexist. On the one side, we have my elder daughter's boyfriend, Greg, who just finished business science at UCT last year, and he went overseas with my daughter to work in France at the as a ski season. We pulled our daughter back from London and from France about 3 weeks ago, and we said, look, we can control things here better than we can control if you're stuck in London or stuck in France. And that was right about the time that the chap from Singapore flew to France, was the resort right next door to where they were. He infected the people in the resort. He then flew to the UK and infected two staff at a GP's practice. But Greg says, hey, I'm 23. I want to see the world. I'm on my own. I can move quickly. My dad says he'll help me out if I get stuck. I want to go overseas. I want to go back overseas. If the virus gets me, I think I've done my research. I'm on that curve where it's not really going to affect me. So actually, I want to live my life and continue. We had a party for my wife's birthday on Saturday night, and as a very, very good GP doctor friend of ours was leaving the party in the morning, she said, bye Nick, lovely to see you. She said, I'm just ready to catch this virus now. I just want to catch it, get it over with, and then I'll I'll deal with it then. And there is definitely no evidence yet. Most viruses, if you catch it, you have immunity, you're unlikely to catch it again. But as with flu, every year it mutates slightly, and that's why we continually do get flu. There is some circumstantial evidence that people have been able to catch it again, and then it really, really is affecting particularly their heart and some of their internal organs. And so for me, it's absolutely prevention is better than cure. And so I sit really, really firmly, as I imagine you probably will have picked up from today's discussion, I sit in this other camp, which is, hey, I'm going to do everything in my power to stop myself from getting it, my family from getting it, my staff from getting it, and close friends if I can share information. Now, I can't see how those two camps can coexist. And we have had some really, I'll call them politely, robust discussions in our family. Last night it was screaming, crying, and mayhem at our dinner table because my daughter's boyfriend wants to go back to Europe. She doesn't know when she'll see him again. She's pulled. She doesn't know whether she should stay with us, where we've said, in the event we have to, we're going to isolate ourselves for a period of time until we can get a handle on where this is going. I don't see how we can operate together. And maybe you will work that out, but we're going to have to find a way to really create barriers. There are way too many medical staff, even with all of their protective gear, becoming infected. And the mitigating factor is that the viral load that they're being exposed to every single day is absolutely astronomical. But if we wish to coexist with those that want to continue with their lives and who say, hey, it's just the flu, let me get it, and those that say, wow, geez, this scares me, I want to be away, is going to be a very, very difficult subject to get our heads around, and I do believe that collectively it will be the best for your team to discuss it and come up with the best solution for yourselves and for your organization.
No, I mean, it's such a real thing where even in your small world, where within a family you have different views, and there's relationships that are linked to the family, and trying to deal with that, and then say to yourself, you know, as a company, how do you accommodate so many different individual views? Yeah, I mean, Rufus, the first time I've ever heard you not have a question on something like this.
I have lots of questions, but not for Nick. They're more about what we need to debate.
Okay. Fair comment.
So, I think everything Nick said is.
Yeah, I'm happy that yeah.
Repeating exactly the same things, and I really can't find fault with anything Nick said.
Yeah.
$1 million questions for me now is what do we do? And I'm thinking company here, there's a lot of thought for all of us to go home and think about. But I've got 1 or 2 suggestions. Like, each of our teams should have all the SMSs available to our staff. If we need to tell them to do something at short notice, come, don't come, whatever the case may be. Our communication strategies, we need to be very prepared. I think this, when it goes, it's going to happen so fast, we won't get a second chance.
Yeah, I mean, I've picked up in your messages that you feel as strongly as Nick about this. I think first of all, I just want to thank you very, very much, Nick.
Yes,
I mean, I find it fascinating listening to you, and you sound like an accomplished after dinner speaker rather than someone who doesn't do this for a living. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm sure everybody around the table and around the country echoes that.